Welcome to the Flying Octopus podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
I'm curious if you heard the other night during the Minnesota Wild game with the Red Wings came back and won, but there was a part in the game where it appeared that Mickey Redmond dropped an F-bomb live on air. And I heard it at the time, and I didn't think like anything of it, but I was like, did he just say what I think he said? And I also thought to myself, yeah, if anyone's going to say it, it might be Mickey. And he's probably a guy that can get away with it. So I didn't think twice about it, but then I saw it on Twitter. And so I got to replay it over and over. And I think he said drop the puck. But I wouldn't put it past him to say what I think he might have said. But I thought that was pretty funny. You know, Mickey's a national treasure when it comes to commentating, and you know he's been the guy for the Red Wings since I was like a little kid, and to hear him still going at this age, and you know he's still there, and it's great. Welcome to episode 24 of the Flying Octopus podcast. I'm your host, Evan Sabrin, joined by my co-host, Devin Little. We got a big show today, guys. A lot to discuss about. It was a pretty big week for the Detroit Red Wings. On today's episode, we'll recap tonight's game versus the Blue Jackets, discuss the Andrew Copp injury and what it means for the Red Wings. We'll talk about some possible trade targets, and we're going to look ahead to Tony and Devin's trip to Ohio for the Stadium Series game between the Red Wings and Blue Jackets on Saturday. And that's why Tony's not with us tonight. He is already on his way to Ohio. And I know you're getting fired up for this, Devin, for this is going to be your first outdoor game. And what's the weather going to be looking like there for this weekend?
A brisk, like 40 degrees. So not too frigid, but also cold enough to where I don't think that there's going to be a lot of ice issues. So should be a pretty good setting in Ohio. I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, you got any big plans before you head down there? You got anything special you're going to do, or?
I definitely want to check out the little fan fest thing they're doing before the game. Maybe check out the Stanley Cup. I haven't seen that in about 12 years. See what else is going on. You know, it's going to be a very, very college atmosphere, given that it's Ohio Stadium. They're doing a whole tailgate thing. I think I'll try to get in on as much shenanigans as I can while maintaining my cool, so to speak.
Well, most importantly, like, have you picked out what you're going to wear? I saw you tweet out this week about what jersey to wear to the Stadium Series, and I've been to 3 outdoor games now, and I'll get into a little bit of that later. But I usually go with the classic Fedorov. You know, I like to go old school. Well, how about you?
I think that if there's ever a time to break out the classic jersey, it's these outdoor games. Especially when it's the Winter Classic, but even the Stadium Series, I think it's perfect for those. I actually bought myself a birthday present a few days ago, and probably what I'm gonna wear. It's not a Red Wings jersey, but it's a jersey. But we'll see. I still might call an audible the morning of.
Oh yeah, you already blew the birthday thing. So happy birthday to you. That was yesterday, and you got a lot of love on social media for that. So happy birthday, my man. You're getting older, but you still look like you're 20. And just remember, that is not an insult. Always take that compliment.
Thank you. I will gladly take that compliment.
All right. Before we get into tonight's game, just want to remind everyone where you can find us. Check us out on YouTube at The Flying Octopod. You can also find us on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Threads under the same name. And don't forget to listen on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Devin, that was a rough start for this home and home versus the Blue Jackets. The Red Wings fell 5-2 tonight. Not a great game by any means. I don't feel like the Red Wings played that poorly, but they definitely got some weird bounces tonight. You know, it started off in the first period. I thought they were buzzing. Eric Gustafsson almost gave up a break, or did give up a breakaway when he failed to realize he had a forward behind him. And Cam Talbot bailed him out. I thought Talbot was excellent in the first period. Stopped all 9 shots he faced, robbed Kent Johnson down low, and looked like he was in for a big game. But, man, second period rolled around and things just started to kind of fall apart. But just 30 seconds in, Comfort found a Brinkat who buried one past Tarasov to open the scoring, gave the Wings a 1-0 lead. 27th of the year for DeBrincat. And man, has he been hot. Just hot. And this is exactly what the Red Wings expected out of him and exactly what the Red Wings needed out of him when they brought him over in a trade last year. But moments later after that, Columbus tied it with a Jake Christensen wrist shot, hit everything in its mother on the way past Talbot, including James Van Riemdyk's stick, and the Jackets had it tied at 1. And then the crazy bounces started coming at and that haunted the Wings at times this year. First, Sean Karai picked up a rebound out of midair with his glove right in front of Talbot. Just got his hand on his glove, didn't close the hand, put it down, pushed it in. Ken and Mickey thought that originally that he had, thrown the puck in the net, but as soon as you saw the replay, it was a great play by Karai.
Mm-hmm.
Then the floodgates really kind of started to open for Columbus, and Red Wings just kind of let loose from there. Kent Johnson tipped a shot from the point. That was just a perfect tip shot. That you couldn't have asked for a better execution on that, and there was really nothing Talbot could do on that one. And then at the 15:01 mark of the second period, James Van Riemdyk, again, all alone in the slot. Boone Jenner found him wide open. Albert Johansson got caught looking around. Rookie mistakes, they're going to happen, but was not a good look there. Wings responded 16:39 on the power play. JT Compher getting his 7th of the season. Nice to see him adding some goals these past couple weeks. Red Wings shots were 24-19 after 2. Third period got underway. And Columbus really thought they had another 3-goal lead when Karai scored again. But after further review, it was really apparent that he had kicked that one in. Third period was also, I thought it was kind of interesting. The Wings really switched up the lines there. We saw Larkin playing with Soderblom and Tarasenko at points, Casper, Raymond, and Berggren. But Wings couldn't get anything going in the third period. Marchenko ended up sealing the deal late with an empty net goal, and the Wings fell 5-2. As far as stats, Wings outshot Columbus 31-30. I mean, if you look at the box score, things are pretty even all around the game. Hits 16-14 in favor of Columbus. Red Wings 31-29 in the faceoff circle. 1 for 3 in the power play, 0 for 2 for Columbus. And 10 block shots for Columbus, 9 for the Red Wings. Again, not the best game, but they have a chance to make it up on Saturday at the Stadium Series Classic. No, Devin, what did you see out of tonight's game? What were your thoughts?
I think that this is probably one of, if not the worst games since Todd McClellan has taken over. And it's also one of those games where, like, as bad as it was, it could have still went the Red Wings' way. Like you mentioned, the Blue Jackets got a lot of puck luck in this game. Pucks were bouncing off of pretty much everyone and their mother, like you said. You're living right when things like that happen. And if, some of those bounces go ever so slightly to the opposite direction, the Red Wings probably at least get a point out of this one, but it's one of those games where the other team's living right, and so you can't afford to make mistakes and help them. And I think that the Red Wings made enough mistakes that it ultimately cost them. I think that what was interesting also is, again, as you mentioned, Evan, the coaching staff started to mix up the lines there, throwing Larkin with Soderblom and Tarasenko, Casper, Berggren, and Raymond, which I think, just sidebar, could be a fun line if they let that marinate for a little bit. But aside from that, I think that it's telling that the line that stayed together is the DeBrincat, Kane, and Compher line, the second line. DeBrincat led Red Wings forwards with 20 minutes and 39 seconds of ice time. Kane was right behind him with 19:33, and Compher finished third with just a second under 19 minutes. So the coaching staff really liked what they saw from that second line, and I'm right there with them. That play, the DeBrincat goal with the assist from Compher, that was a really nice goal. I thought just in general, JT Compher had a pretty good game. Obviously, recently ascended back to that second line center role. This is the type of game that you want to see from him as you're contemplating what you want to do about that Andrew Copp situation, but we'll get to that a little bit more in a little bit. Talbot had a weird game too because he made a lot of really good saves, and for all intents and purposes, he's probably the reason why the Red Wings had a chance in this game, even into the third period. But also, had a goal or two that maybe you'd like to see him get more of, get more in front of, get more of at least, give himself a better opportunity to stop the puck. But I don't think that they lost this game because Cam Talbot was in goal ultimately. I'm very interested to see who gets the start in the Stadium Series between Talbot and Lyon. Seems like Talbot's kind of getting the lion's share right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the start again. But who knows? Maybe they do turn to Lyon. Overall, I think that about halfway through the game, I myself started to think ahead to Saturday and how much fun that's going to be, and how, even just when you look at the standings, how like it's awesome. That's going to be a really important game aside from all the fanfare. And I think that right around halfway through the game too, the Red Wings started to think about Saturday and how fun that's going to be, and they kind of forgot they were playing a game. So it's okay for me to halfway through the game check out and start thinking ahead, but it's not okay for the Red Wings to do it when they're actively playing a game. And I think that to some extent, that is what we saw.
All right. Well, good news is Red Wings are still in the top wild card spot, tied with Columbus at 66 points, but it looks like they have the tiebreaker. And more good news tonight: the Bruins also lost to the Islanders 2-1. So no one really gained ground tonight with the Rangers and the Senators being off. Now, I did want to add one thing to tonight's game that I really liked, and doesn't really have a lot to do with hockey. But if you watched the broadcast tonight, you got to see Johnny Gaudreau's mom there, who was traveling with the Blue Jackets on the road trip, and it's hard not to root for the Blue Jackets and to see their success that they're having this year, amidst this awful tragedy that happened this summer. And I really appreciate that. And I think that's a team that, outside of with the Red Wings, that I'm going to root for down the stretch, because I really like how they've taken care of that family and kind of brought them into their own. And we saw the crowd singing happy birthday to Johnny's 1-year-old son earlier this week. And that was it was tough. It was tough to watch, but it's great to see the love that the family is receiving from everyone in the hockey community. And so I wanted to get that out there. Let's shift gears here real quick, and let's talk about the Andrew Copp injury. And Andrew Copp's going to be out for the remainder of the season. Torn pec, which he already underwent surgery for on Tuesday. He was injured the second period of the 4-3 overtime loss to the Wild on Saturday. Timeline for recovery looks about 4 to 6 months. Copp has 23 points, 10 goals, 13 assists in 56 games this season. Is third with the Red Wings. I felt like ever since McClellan's taken over, we've seen kind of a different Copp. We've seen more of that two-way play that we've been really hoping to get out of him. The points haven't been there; they haven't been there all along. But his play more involved. He definitely seems like he's fitting in better. But this is just bad news for the Red Wings going down the stretch. Not to mention, we also saw Michael Rasmussen earlier this week take a dirty hit from Trevor Zegras on Sunday. Zegras was suspended 3 games for that hit. I thought that was incredibly dirty. I also wonder, right after the hit, you looked at Zegras on the broadcast, and he kept saying, no, no, no. And he clearly got a cheap shot in there on Rasmussen. But good to see that the NHL player safety dropped 3 games on Zegras. Hopefully he's not traded to the Red Wings anytime soon. I don't think he's going to fare well there in the Red Wings locker room. So Devin, with Andrew Copp out now for the rest of the season, the Wings are already short at center. What's the move here? What's the play? Is there a way to tinker this lineup, or are the Red Wings definitely going to make a move here at the deadline coming up next week?
Well, first and foremost, I raise your hand if you had being upset about an Andrew Copp injury on your bingo card, because I don't know that was on many people's bingo card. That is actually a very huge loss, because he has settled in really nicely on that second line next to Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane or Vladimir Tarasenko, depending on the game. But good for him. Like you said, Evan, he's looked like the player that the Red Wings hoped that they were getting when they signed him a few years ago. Now, where do they go from here? Well, like I said, JT Compher had the type of game that you are hoping to see from him in that role. He played the second line center role this game tonight against the Blue Jackets. Seems like he'll probably fill that role again on Saturday. I think if nothing else changes, I think that's the play. I think you just kind of move Compher up. He was the team second line center last season. spent some time between DeBrincat and Kane, so he has familiarity there. And then it just kind of depends on, and then the decision really comes down to what do you want to do with the third line center? Does Rasmussen move back to the middle? He has a lot of experience playing that position, but he's been on the wing more in recent years. Of course, Marco Casper was drafted to be a center. He did start the season down the middle and has since jumped up to that top line on the wing with Larkin and Raymond. I think it's definitely an option. I don't know that it is the first option or even the second option that they would go with, but it's something that they could do. Um, you know, months ago, Casper had a few games on that second line between DeBrincat and Kane, and I think that he would bring a lot of the same stuff that Copp brings to that line. But then, who's going into that spot next to Larkin and Raymond? I think it's more important that you keep that together than plug the hole on the second line center, especially because they should have not only internal options but external options too. I think that they were always going to at least test the forward market at the trade deadline. I think that the Copp injury kind of gives them a kick in the butt to like do something. I don't know that it will be a big thing. We've heard Dylan Cousins' name thrown around in months prior. I'm sure that will heat up over the next week again. Braden Shen, I know, is kind of a name that's popping up a lot more, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's connected to the Red Wings. The Red Wings and the Blues tend to be um, friendly with each other in terms of how much they make trades with each other. There's a few other options out there too. I think that if you're the Red Wings right now, it's obviously a tough situation to be in, but it could be a lot worse. You have some options internally, so you don't have to make a move. But realistically, if you're serious about making a playoff push this year, I do think that you have to exhaust all your options in terms of looking at what's out there and what makes sense to give you every opportunity to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think it comes down to one word for me, and that is cost. And the Red Wings prospects, I don't want to see any of the high end prospects move. There's too many, and for players like that we're talking about, teams are going to be asking about the Brentson Nygaards, the Nate Danielsons, the ASPs, and I don't see Yzerman wavering and giving up any of those. I don't think he's going to mortgage the future for this season. We know this team is not a cup contending team, so I don't see it happening, but I think again it all comes down to cost. So what's the market going to look like next week? I think the Red Wings could bring in a forward. I'd like to see that. There's a bunch of different possibilities. There's so many trade rumors around at this time of year, but you never know what's true until it actually happens. But the Red Wings have the cap space now. We forgot to mention that Ville Husso. Speaking of teams that are friendly, Yzerman's buddy Verbeek kind of did us a favor there. That opened up some space and may give Steve Yzerman some more options as we hit this deadline here. But I'm kind of like in that should they or shouldn't they mode. It's one of those things that you really gotta evaluate your team at this point of the season and be like, is it worth going all in to make the playoffs this year? But if you can get away with any second or third round pick and bring in a legitimate guy, then yes, I'm probably fine with that considering how deep the prospect pool is. But again, what are they asking for? It's got to be realistic, and it's got to be if it's a big name and a player, you got to make sure that they're going to be around for a while because there's no the Red Wings aren't in a rental spot, and in years past or back in our day when the Red Wings were dominating, it was a lot of rentals. They were pretty much Avis, and now it's they're not there yet. But I'm optimistic heading into this deadline. This is like the worst time of year for my wife. She hates the trade deadline because I watch that ticker and when something big goes down, for example, Mikko Rantanen a couple weeks ago, and my first thought is, oh my God. And I'll say that out loud and she'll run in the room thinking, we've lost a loved one or some bad accident happened or something. And it's really just players moving teams. But I digress.
Oh, you too.
Yeah. The NFL free agency and the NHL trade deadline, I think she has marked on her calendar. It's almost like, okay, today we're going to take it easy. So, Devin, if the Red Wings do make a move, give me a couple trade targets that you think would fit in nice with the wing wheel.
I'm on my galaxy brain mode right now, and that I think that when it all comes down to it, the Red Wings are going to be very cost effective with what they do. I Last week Tony mentioned Alec Martinez as a potential addition on the blue line. I think that makes a lot of sense. He's from Michigan. He's a veteran guy, has championship rings, and you probably aren't trading anything more than a second to get him. And I would be surprised if it's that much. Um, so you fill a need and you're not mortgaging really anything in terms of your future. But I also think that the Red Wings have an opportunity to kind of make a big swing and really tell the team, we like what we've seen. We really think you guys can make the playoffs. We're going to get you, a big, a potential difference maker to help you do it. And those don't come cheap, but I think that there's a real opportunity for the Red Wings to do this. To kind of go into players that maybe make some sense. There's a couple of forward centers that could maybe fill that Andrew Copp role. I'm looking at Jared McCann over in Seattle. I think he's a quality player, kind of an underrated player, honestly, across the league. I remember when the Penguins acquired him to then expose him in the expansion draft. That was a big, what is going on with that? That is nuts. Why would they do that? Or it wasn't Pittsburgh. It was it was Toronto who did that. It was Kyle Dubas. Now, yeah, Kyle Dubas did that. And then Seattle claimed him. I think that McCann actually does a lot of similar things as JT Compher, honestly. And by that I mean he's a really solid two-way player. I don't think that he's like an elite second line center, but I think that he can fill the role. And for what it's worth, he also is one of those advanced statistic darlings. If you really get into the fancy stats, he usually performs really well. Play usually goes in the right direction when he's on the ice, and I think the Red Wings could use as many players like that as possible. He does have 43 points in 60 games right now. That's second line pace if I've ever seen one. I think that he isn't a real mucker and grinder like Andrew Copp, so maybe that's a reason to maybe think about this. Maybe he goes in the top line next to Larkin and Raymond, and then Casper goes into that second line role. Maybe, but I don't know. I think that if there's a reasonable way to get a Jared McCann, I think you need to at least investigate it. And then another forward I am kind of have been thinking about lately is Braden Shen. I mentioned him just a little bit ago. Current captain of the St. Louis Blues, veteran, and was a member of that Stanley Cup team in 2019 with the Blues. He checks a lot of boxes. He's veteran. He has some pedigree. Obviously, he wears a C. He's good in the locker room. He is the Blues second line center right now. I imagine he'd be just fine as the Red Wings second line center. The question when it comes to Shen and McCann for that matter is, like you said, Evan, cost. What is the cost to acquire this player? Does it set back the long-term picture in a meaningful way? And both of them have years on their contracts still. McCann has 2 years left at $5 million. With the cap going up as much as it is over the next couple of years, $5 million does not scare me that much. I mean, that's less than what Andrew Copp's making. Braden Shen has 3 more years at 6.5. I would say that Braden Shen's the more proven player of the two, but he's also more proven because he's been playing longer. He's a lot older. And 3 years left at 6.5. I think that there's a way to make that palatable. I think that you'd have to have some moving pieces going St. Louis's way to kind of mitigate some of that cost, but there would definitely have to be massaging to make that make sense. And if they do, I do think that Shen would fill that role well. He plays that hard nose, isn't afraid to go to the dirty areas game that I think you need on that second line next to DeBrincat and Kane. Now, to where things get really fun, I think is on the blue line. Again, a guy like Alec Martinez is probably the sensible type of player for the Red Wings to go get. Get a third line defenseman, third pairing defenseman that isn't going to move the needle, but isn't going to hurt you and just kind of stabilizes as it adds to your depth. But if they wanted to get a little crazy and maybe make a big swing, they could stick with Chicago and go after Seth Jones. It's been kind of well publicized over the last week that he wants out. He's formally asked for a trade out of Chicago. This is a guy that 5 years ago people were kind of talking about as one of the more underrated defensemen in the league. And then kind of since he got traded to Chicago, it's kind of fallen off the map a bit for one reason or another. Now he's signed for 5 more years at 9.5 million. That's a lot of money. Um, Now that being said, I think that Chicago's a team that would be incentivized, that could be incentivized to retain some of that money. And you might even be able to get a third team involved to retain even more of it. And suddenly, Seth Jones at let's say 5 million, I would think about that at least a little bit, depending on what the cost is, right? Um, he'd stabilize that right side, and you kind of have a healthy bridge to when Axel Sending Pelika is like ready to be a guy, basically. And then on another end, speaking of Axel Sending Pelika, a guy that I think would be an excellent mentor for him, Eric Carlson, actually over in Pittsburgh. He is signed for 2 more years at $10 million, so he's got a lot of money in his contract. But again, somebody retains on him. He's 2 years left at 5 mil. He's a three-time Norris Trophy winner. I have interest in that guy. I know that I know that he's like the poster child for why the NHL needs a best defensive defenseman award, but Carlson plays a really offensive, move the puck forward game. And that's the type of game that I think you want to see Axel Sandin Pellikka play when he's in the NHL one day. Maybe a little bit better defensively than Eric Carlson, but he's obviously Swedish like Sandin Pellikka. Carlson has had experience playing with Lucas Raymond on an international level. Oh, Lord knows all the Swedes that are in the organization. I think that he's the type of player that would bring a presence to the locker room in the same way that Patrick Kane did last year. And I think that with a guy like Moritz Seider in the lineup already that can eat up those really tough minutes, I think that you can maybe provide a environment for Carlson to kind of just do what he does best. And he can, you think the power play is good now, wait until you add Eric Carlson to it. And then last but not least, I'm not going to talk about this too much because I don't really think it's going to be a thing. But it was mentioned in a Sportsnet article recently that Jordan Binnington is a Blue that could be on the move, and the Red Wings in Detroit was specifically mentioned as a team that might have interest. So I feel like you got to pay that a little bit of attention, right? Jordan Binnington obviously kind of boosted his profile thanks to that Four Nations tournament. Was obviously Team Canada starter, played every single game, has a Stanley Cup ring from 2019, is kind of known for being disruptive, we'll say, on the ice. And I think that for what it's worth, Sebastian Kosa kind of has a little bit of a disruptor in him as well. And I think it would be kind of a fitting mentor for him just in terms of how to harness that and how to, stay within yourself. Now, again, maybe Bennington's not the right person to teach that to him, but hey, you kind of legitimize your goaltending situation if you add a guy like Binnington. He's a proven starter in this league. You win a Stanley Cup, you deserve some respect. And you have Talbot, you have Binnington. I imagine you're trading Alex Line if you do this. And then you have Kosa at your number 3 spot, basically. I mean, that's a pretty good depth chart heading into next season, if you ask me. But again, goaltending is third on my list in terms of positions that they need to worry about right now. If they come out of the trade deadline with Jordan Binnington and nothing else, I mean, cool, that'll be like a holy cow, they really did that thing. But also, there are so many different things that they should be looking at instead of this. If they're going to go out and get a goalie, I think that's an off-season move. But hey, we get surprised at the deadline every year, right? So who's to say this wouldn't be the big surprise?
Yeah, Bennington, his stock could not be higher right now, which says a lot for him for the way he's played the past couple of years. And wouldn't that be coming to full circle with Billy Husso actually beating out Bennington for the starter's job towards the end of the season before the Red Wings signed him, and then Husso faltered in the playoffs and Bennington came back. But Yeah, I mean, I'm all aboard the McCann train. Choo choo. Like 40 goals. He was a 40 goal scorer just 2 years ago. He fits the timeline at 28 years old, and the contract is right in the Red Wings wheelhouse. So that's a
Absolutely.
guy I might want to get. I would give up a little more. I think you're talking a second round pick there at least, and maybe a second tier prospect if you had to give up a Boehm or you had to give up a Wallander. I mean, I like Jared McCann. I
I
really
could
like this. I think him on the second line with DeBrincat and Kane could be quite good, and that'll
I,
give the Red Wings a pretty solid top six. So I don't know if it'll happen, but I wouldn't mind seeing it. I think he's got the skill set to play with this kind of team, and he would be a great addition if they could do it. Seth Jones is always intriguing to me. I always, great player. I think Seth Jones' career has kind of dipped up and down just because he's never
absolutely.
played on like really quality teams. You know, he started off in Nashville. They weren't a great team at the time. Columbus had struggled when he went there. And now in Chicago, they're in a complete rebuild. So it's kind of hard to gauge his talent level. And you can tell that obviously with his trade request this week that he's getting frustrated. You know, he was in that McKinnon draft. I remember that was that
Yeah.
2013 draft where everyone thought he was going to go number one.
Hmm.
But no, he intrigues me, and I think he would be a great mentor. And Eric Carlson would as well. And Eric Carlson only 2 years left on his deal. That could also fit in as well. You're not going to get much defensively out of him. But the Red Wings has never seemed to bother Steve Yzerman when it comes to trading for players with offensive abilities and no defensive abilities. So I'm curious. You think though, real quick though, do you think Nate Danielson's going to get a look possibly here in the next month or so, or you
I
think
could
they
see
still
it.
keep him down in Grand Rapids?
I could see it, and I think honestly, there's three or four Griffins that I think could get a look down the stretch run. Now, that being said, we're talking about them adding pieces at the deadline, right? If Griffins are making appearances in the lineup, unless it's a very focused thing, they want to maybe give Danielson a shot in that second line role. That'd be crazy, but maybe they want to see it. Um, if Griffins are entering the lineup, my fear is that means that the lineup is getting injured. If you're bringing in outside help to fortify your lineup, uh, the only way it makes, I guess, sense to me is if you're also maybe moving out some other guys, so that way you have room for a Mazer or a Danielson or whoever to make to make their debut. Um, and when I think about this, I think about how good Edvidson looked down the stretch run last season, right? Like he was their trade deadline acquisition. He really improved the blue line. So I guess the question is that player in Grand Rapids right now? Do they have another player that could join them for the stretch run and really kind of help move the needle? Um, maybe. Maybe Danielson. I've really liked what I've liked from what I've seen from Amadeus Lombardi. I don't know that he's like on the forefront of getting a call up right now, but I personally would like to see it. And then I mentioned Carter Mazer. I think he's since coming back from his injury has started to reestablish himself, and still to this day say that he would have had a real good shot at making the lineup if he would have had a fair shot at it and was healthy. So definitely an opportunity for these guys to do it. Maybe less so if they are bringing in a number of pieces at the deadline, though.
Quick trade proposal that just came right up in my head, right there in the noggin. Would you give up Carter Mazer in a deal for Jared McCann?
Oof, oof.
And it's probably not a one for one. I'm talking like Carter Mazer in a third or Carter Mazer in a fourth for Jared McCann.
It's That's one of those things where realistically you probably have to say yes. Um, but it would hurt my heart to do it. I love Carter Mazer, and I think he could be a real fan favorite in the not so distant future.
I think he's probably a player that might be able to get it done without giving up like your top
Hmm.
prospects. But again, a lot of people consider him as, one of the premier prospects. But at some point, that you you've got to give up something to get something. People aren't just giving
Mhm.
away these, top six players for free. Want to shift gears here real quick and start talking about this weekend, man, because you're about to go on quite the adventure. Your first outdoor game. I've been to a couple. They're crazy. Everyone I've been to, except the Colorado one, it's dude, just button up, man, just in case to be safe. It's we went if you at the big house in Michigan with the Toronto Red Wings game. My wife and I came home for that, and it was so cold that you literally would buy a beer and it would turn into a slushy within seconds. By the second period, my wife was crying because it was so freezing, and the tears were freezing to her face,
My
like
God.
literally freezing to her face, and you could see like on my goatee like icicles starting. It was crazy. I mean, there was people like in the stands going into the bathroom and huddling up because of the warmth in the bathroom, all the steam from people peeing. Like that's how crazy it was. We saw people getting carried out. Like it was freezing cold, and it was almost hard to enjoy the game. But we powered through it. What's the number one thing you're looking forward to this weekend?
Honestly, just the spectacle of it all. It's obviously a very unique um, environment for a hockey game. I've always, sorry, Evan, I know you're a state fan, but I'm a Michigan fan. I've always kind of had that thing of wanting to go see a game at Ohio Stadium, and I feel like this is my way of kind of cheating and making it happen. I get to go there and not wear maize and blue. So, um, I have had the thought of like I'm wearing red to Ohio Stadium. What is going on here? What?
Yeah, I didn't
But
really think about that because like the Red Wings, like their new jerseys, they're almost kind of like an Ohio State like look, red and white. Yeah, it's
yeah,
nuts.
there's gonna be a lot of Ohio State fans that morning are like, I can't believe I'm wearing blue to Ohio State. Like it's gonna be
Yeah,
kind of a fun thing, but
I didn't even think of
um,
that.
just the like I said, just the spectacle of it all. The flyover they're gonna do. During or before the anthem. Very excited for that. And then just see how the event all comes together. Like I said, seems like the weather's going to be really good, so it shouldn't be like a thing where people are the crowd's miserable or anything like that. Fingers crossed, but it seems like it should be just a really good environment for a hockey game. I'm a 21 Pilots fan. I'm sure they'll put on a good show during the first intermission. And then if all else fails, I'm gonna see Tony, and I've never met him in person. I'm very excited about that. Hoping to see maybe some more familiar faces while I'm walking around the concourse at Ohio Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are gonna have a blast. It's gonna be a great time, and it's almost like how the four nations came to become a big thing because it's just perfect timing. Because right now the Red Wings and Columbus,
Yeah,
they're battling each other. I mean, they're neck and neck. They're tied in points in the standings. So it couldn't have worked out better for the NHL. And I would really like to see the Red Wings come out on top on this one because tonight was definitely not the outcome that they would have preferred. But after that, Tuesday they're going to be home against Carolina. Thursday they're going to play Utah for the first time. The Utah Hockey Club comes to Detroit. And then Friday is the big trade deadline, and they're playing the Capitals, which is arguably the best team in hockey right now. We'll be back with you on next Thursday. Devin, you got any final thoughts before you head down to Columbus?
anyone that's heading down there, also safe travels. Hopefully it's a fun game for all involved, and yeah, it's like you said, Evan. Even after the Stadium Series, after all the excitement and all that good stuff, it's right back to business. The Hurricanes are a team that they got to be able to hang with if they're going to be a playoff team, and the Capitals. That's who. That's it's almost a shame that that's the day of the trade deadline because that would be a really good temperature check if it was like the day before the trade deadline, but alas, they'll be making moves. They either will have made moves or they'll be making moves right before that game. So it'll be interesting. And also, for what it's worth, it's always fun to see the new team in town. Excited to see those Utah unis in in action for the first time, really. Yeah, like you said, Evan, it's the toughest schedule in the NHL, and I think that they're now in the point of the season where, despite the fact that it is the toughest schedule, they don't really have any room to breathe. They have to win as many as possible. Go figure, but yeah, you don't really have excuses anymore. We know how razor close or how thin their margin was last season. They missed by a point. This stretch, this month really of March, is what's going to ultimately make or break their playoff chase, and it starts with the Stadium Series.
Yeah, let's hope this season ends a little better than last one. That was a heartbreaker last year, and I'm ready to see this team in the playoffs again because it's been too long. If you would have told me 9 years ago that it would take 9 years, though, to laugh, but here we are. And man, time flies. But it's the fact that there hasn't been playoff hockey yet at the LCA is not only concerning, it's depressing. And this is Hockey Town, and the playoffs need to come sooner rather than later. But anyway, Devin, thanks for joining me today. This was episode 24 of the Flying Octopus podcast. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week to talk some trade deadline, hopefully and seeing what kind of moves are made around the league if the Red Wings get their hands in there and make a move. So we will talk to you next Friday. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.